All right, folks. Great. Let's kick things off with an official hello. Welcome to the fourth and final episode in our Unpromptable webinar series. We're so glad you're with us today. We created this series to deepen the conversation around our L&D talent trends that are shaping the industry this year and really beyond. This conversation's been incredibly robust. So we've been coming together every Thursday in May, or I'm sorry, in March, thinking ahead here. Um, and we're talking just about the evolving roles of the L&D leader and professional and the things we should really keep top of mind this year. If you've missed any of the other three sessions or you just want to binge watch the whole season, you can always check out the recordings. We will share those with you. If you haven't had a chance to check out our full L&D and Talent Trends report, we would love to share that with you right now. It will be a deep dive into those 9 key trends to keep top of mind. We're covering a couple of them today, but do check out the others. Of course, it is a pleasure, as always, to introduce our presenters today. John Cleve is Director of Systemic Solutions here at SweetRush. He works with clients to ensure training is delivered well and that its impact is measured. John holds a master's in education and a PhD in computer science from Northwestern, and over a 3-decade career has worked with a wide variety of clients and countless L&D platforms. He works very hard to stay up to speed with their evolution and AI use. John is currently on a mission to visit every museum in the city of Chicago, loves games, and currently sits at third place in his neighborhood March Madness pool.
Yeah, close third. Very close
Close
third.
third. Uh-oh. Therese Longo is a learning and development professional and solution architect at SweetRush, who is passionate about finding solutions that make a real difference in workplace performance. With almost 25 years of experience in instructional design and talent development, she helps organizations align learning and performance strategies with business goals and create solutions that truly help people succeed at their jobs. When she's not thinking about performance improvement, you'll likely find Therese exploring museums, traveling to inspiring places, or working on a Lego build. At home, she shares life with Romeo, her Amazon parrot, a fan favorite, who is always eager to join meetings and be part of the action. Both John and Therese would love to connect with you, so please do reach out on LinkedIn. Romeo is still working on his online presence, so keep you posted on that. I will drop John and Teresa's LinkedIn into chat right now. Now, a quick word about SweetRush for those of you who may be newer to us. We were founded in 2001 and have been engaged in L&D for the past quarter of a century. In January this year, we celebrated another milestone, joining the NIIT family of world-class learning services. We offer strategic consulting and are known for our engaging, effective, and innovative custom learning solutions, which include virtual and augmented reality and AI-powered learning experiences. We also have an extensive network of high-performing L&D professionals and subject matter experts, and we love sharing that wealth through our talent solution services. Finally, it's been an honor to receive numerous industry awards for the solutions we develop with our amazing client partners. And now, without further ado, I'll hand things over to John and Therese.
Very good. Well, thank you, Tiffany. I think it's no surprise to any of you. I mean, L&D platform vendors are incorporating AI into their platforms all over the place. You see it almost daily. You see it in learning management systems and learning experience platforms and content management systems, tools. All of them are coming out with AI based capabilities. Our belief at SweetRush is that, regardless of the vendor's claims, these are not capabilities you just turn on and suddenly L&D is working. There's no magic alone in it. The L&D folks need to be active managers and stewards of this. AI is just not a panacea. I mean, it's a wondrous thing, but it isn't a a kill-all be-all. And so if any of you attended any of the other webinars that Tiffany mentioned that we've been given over the past few weeks, you probably heard that theme a lot. That's the whole idea of unpromptable. There's a role for humans in this mix. And you're going to hear that a lot from Therese and I today. As L&D professionals, your mission remains unchanged. It's your job to guide learners along a learning journey toward greater proficiency. And you can do that with or without technology. You need to know where do learners need to be at in order to help themselves and their organization. And then you look for how technology is going to help you get them there. It's not going to figure that out without your involvement. So today we're going to explore ways that AI is being added to the L&D tech stack. And we're going to talk about how to think about it and how to use it to your advantage.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot of excitement around Gen AI making better training more quickly. And it can, but only if we give it something meaningful to use, because as we know, it's still garbage in and garbage out. As we know, Gen AI runs on data, and most training feeds it weak information like completion rates and quiz scores versus how the learning transfers to job performance. So if we don't define performance clearly, AI isn't going to fix that. It just scales the problem. For example, if you have a 95% completion rate on a cybersecurity course, but at the same time phishing clicks increase, clearly there's an issue. The learners completed the training, but couldn't apply what they learned. If instead we change the input to realistic phishing emails and scenarios, now AI can generate targeted challenges that connect the learning to performance. Now AI works. It's important to understand that AI doesn't fix weak training, it amplifies it. So the question we need to ask is, are we clear enough about how we define performance so that AI has something worth scaling?
Yeah, and to follow on that, I mean, one of the big wins with Gen AI is that you can use it to create simulations, such as role plays or case study analysis, and you can do it at an unprecedented low cost and effort, phenomenal. And the obvious benefit of that is that you're allowing learners a chance to practice skills in context. And I'm a dyed-in-the-wool John Deweyite. That's a pretty important thing. That's how I claim we learn virtually everything we know how to do. So simulations are great for practice, but for purposes of our talk today, even more important is that simulations generate data that you and AI can both use to ensure that learners are moving along the journey toward proficiency. And let's look at an example of this. So suppose you have a sales team and they need to be able to manage customer conversations around some industry trend that's emergent, and you want them to be able to talk about this new thing in a way. One way to do that is just to tell them this is what you should say, or these are the objections you're going to hear, but in one ear out the other, right? So alternatively, you go to Gen AI, you build a role play simulation where they actually have to converse with a simulated customer and listen, between the lines and ask good questions and so on. And the result is they get to actually practice that conversation. So when they're live, they're used to doing it. And the AI can provide them coaching and talk about, well, you forgot to say this, you should have said that, and so on. But as I said earlier, the biggest thing is you can capture all of their inputs. Now you know how your salespeople are talking. And therefore you can analyze that data and realize, ooh, everybody's missing this. Maybe we do additional training. Maybe there's a couple people that just aren't getting it. So we reach out for one-on-one coaching with them and so on. So you get the data out of the simulation and bingo, you suddenly have a lot to work with in terms of how to get them all to where they're doing this well. And we don't think that Gen AI is going to do this on its own. We think that, you as humans are going to have to shape that simulation and you're going to have to analyze the results. You may use Gen AI to help you with that, but at the end of the day, you as a human are responsible for getting them to that increased proficiency you're seeking.
Right. We can't just hand training over to AI and hope for the best. Humans still matter because performance happens within the complex context and cultures of our organizations. We need to remember that AI understands data, but humans understand context. L&D's L&D professionals bridge the gap between generic content and the specific unwritten rules of a company's culture. Meaningful growth requires empathy and psychological safety. Humans provide the mentorship and soft skill coaching that a bot's encouragement just cannot replicate. Humans provide the strategic intent or the why, whereas AI provides the how. Only people can align learning initiatives with shifting business goals and decide which problems actually require a human solution. And also, humans serve as the ethical final filter, correcting AI hallucinations and biases while ensuring training remains inclusive, accurate, and compliant. Next, we'd love to learn more about what Gen AI tools you're using. From the choices on the screen, select the letter that best aligns with your organization and type your response in the chat. If more than one is true, feel free to enter multiple letters. See what we got. B.
Yeah, not surprisingly. I mean, I think they have 85% of the operating system market. Microsoft does. So clearly Copilot is probably going to win. Wow. And Nicole's using three. Very, very good. Well, not using it, but when you do, it's Copilot and Gemini. Got it. And yeah, there's other ones that are not out there. Yeah. B, C, B and F. Very good. Yeah. So a fair number have this isn't their first rodeo. Good to know. All right.
Great.
Yeah, and we will obviously crunch those numbers with Gen AI quite deeply once this webinar is over. So we're gonna start looking in terms of Gen AI and tech at the two big gorillas in the room, which is Microsoft and Google. I mean, these dominate the tech landscape, and both are spending billions to bring AI to the masses. And as you all know, I mean, almost anyone with a Windows machine or using Office has access to Copilot. And theoretically can use it to ask questions or have it help do work. And if your infrastructure is Google, like SweetRush, Gemini is right there at fingertips, constantly getting in the way in the tools that I use. For instance, the slide deck, it's always asking me if I want it to beautify and whatnot. So it's right there. It's handy. It's in everyone's browsers. Typically, when you type in your prompt, it's in the search bar. It's coming up with Gemini-based answers if you're using Chrome. So it's logical to assume that people are going to be using these things. I think even if you have restrictions around your organization, chances are really good that people are going to ChatGPT these days or Anthropic and whatnot and using it. So we think that it's going to, the dam is broke, the water's coming in, everyone's using AI. But the thing that we want to stress is that, you should, as L&D professionals, we think you should be in front of this. We think rather than just allow it to happen in an ad hoc way, you should be, driving the bus. And there's three questions to ask yourself over and over as you figure out how to get there. And the first one is what might AI help people do better? How can it help somebody be more productive? That really does mean that you gain an understanding of what people actually do at work, and then you figure out, okay, how is AI going to help support this? And I've got an example of a company that we've been working with that I think illustrates this. So, this is a pharmaceutical company. They have a lot of clinicians and various science folk who are working on drug protocols and so forth. And they're currently conducting a series of workshops where clinicians come together to share ideas and experiences around their use of AI. They're exploring how to speed up clinical analysis or develop drug protocols and so on. And it looks like these workshops are really popular. They get great attendance, and it's a chance for people to teach each other, learn from each other's mistakes, and it seems to be very successful. And these workshops are sponsored by the L&D folks at the pharmaceutical company. So really good, solid approach toward it. The second question is, what do they need to know about AI to make use of it? And this goes beyond teaching them how to write prompts and giving them useful documentation for this. I think it's also recognizing that AI can't do everything, and also to know that there are legal and ethical issues, the intellectual property, failing to QA the AI output, just accepting it carte blanche without, asking hard questions around how it came up with whatever it came up with. That's all something that L&D ought to make sure is embedded in everyone's mindset as they explore this. Another thing I'll bring up is that if you all are watching the news, there's a lot of companies that are using AI as a pretext for worker layoffs. They're claiming that we can get rid of 1,000 people or 2,000 people because we think AI is going to be there. And the reason that's relevant mainly is because there may be a feeling amongst people in your organization that if they're using AI, are they training their replacement? And there could be a strong pushback to say, I don't want to use this because at some point you're going to fire me and just start using it. So think about what their attitude is, and you need to ensure them that that's not going to be the case if you can. Another question is whether leadership is of the same mindset. And the third question that you need to ask is, how can L&D help them make best use of AI? Have a strategy. It may be a strategy that's constantly evolving and moving, but again, don't just rely on ad hoc. And really think about what the long-term pathway for your company is in terms of embracing this emergent technology. All right, so I'm now going to turn to LMS. I mean, in 45 minutes, I can't cover all of the technologies that are out there, and I'm going to make that claim right now. It's happening everywhere. So I decided to really hone in on how AI is going into LMSs, and mainly because it's a ubiquitous part of the L&D tech ecosystem, and it's probably the LMSs are probably L&D's most immediate route to AI use. There's over 1,000 LMS vendors, depending on how you define them, out there, and there are many of them are doing stuff. So I can't say I've done a comprehensive look at all the ways that AI is being used, but I will say we've looked at a lot of them, and there's 5 common trends that we're seeing across many of them of what they're doing. So just to look at the general buckets, you see them here. So the LMS vendors are adding AI to let people create content quickly. Some are using it to facilitate translation so that you can deliver in multiple languages. Some are trying to use it to create adaptive learning environments where you can tailor curricula to individual people's needs and abilities. Some are implementing an AI coach or assistant in their LMS. And finally, some are using it to simplify and automate LMS administration. So we're now going to talk through each of these 5 things and how to make the best use of it. And I hope to come back to Stephanie's question about the simulation and using simulation in here as we go through these. So let us move on. Well, before I get there, can you type yes or no in the chat as to, are you already using AI in your LMS? Very curious to know whether you're currently using it, and using it as opposed to experimenting, playing with it, thinking we might use it. Is anybody actually using it? Well, there's one, several no's. There's one yes, a couple yeses. All right. Very good. All right. Your AI, Russell. Very good. Future state. Fair enough. All right. So a lot of no's. Yeah. And, and obviously things are changing every day. LMS vendors are getting better at figuring out what's working and not working. So fair enough. Well, let's jump into the first common trend. There we are. Content creation. So I think this is the most popular thing for them to do. So they incorporate some sort of simple kind of WYSIWYG content authoring tool into the LMS. And then they attach Gen AI to it so that you can tell Gen AI, I wanted to create an e-learning course around X, Y, and Z. Here's a SharePoint. Here's a PDF. Here's other materials. It bing, bam, boom. It creates a draft of it. You can go through and edit and change the imaging and change the ordering and so forth. You click the publish button and then bingo, your training is out the door, perhaps in hours or at least in days. We used to call these things learning content management systems, but that label has become pretty useless just because so many LMSs are adding content creation in there and whatnot. They're also what we see a lot, Learn Upon being one of them, is that you can use Gen AI to create assessments. So you feed it materials and you say, can you create questions around this? And it bingo creates a question bank that you can then use to ensure that people have mastered the skills and the knowledge that people have. And all of this, is aimed at a good thing, which is, make it easier to get training out to people and so on. But as Tree said earlier, and as I said, we're going to be stressing, it's garbage in, garbage out. The information you feed it in order to tell it to create a course is critical. The wrong answer is we're going to feed it everything that I can think of and then ask it to do a course. You have to do something that is often called context engineering, which is be smart about what you tell the Gen AI to do in here. And there's an art to that. And it's an art that I think a lot of us are still, perfecting in terms of knowing what information to give it in order for it to do it appropriate. And I think there's something even more profoundly here is creating a whole lot of e-learning really quickly, the right answer. And I'll tell you a story. So I recently met with a sales director whose company distributes pipes, valves, and meters and various equipment to industrial customers. They have 400,000 products in their catalog, and they provide these things in 6 different industries. So it's a huge array of products and applications of those products. And this person, the sales director, created hundreds of PowerPoints about the various products and videos that he recorded to just talk about these various things. And recently, his parent company bought an LMS, which has a content creation tool with Gen AI. And so he's able to take these PowerPoints, feed it into the Gen AI content creator, and create an e-learning in literally 20 minutes or so. And then he goes in and swaps in better imaging and fine tunes it and hits publish. And so now he's, in a short period of time, he can literally have hundreds of e-learning modules that cover all those 400,000 products, or many of them. But the problem with this is that you're not going to sit through 200 micro learning modules and walk away with much in your brain that's going to be effective. You may pick up a little things, but having a huge array of trainings around your products, it's going to be really difficult. I mean, chances are a salesperson is going to make a call on a water purification plant on the next day, and at that moment wants to say, okay, tell me about the 5 products that are applicable to this guy's need, and tell me about what I got to think about it. So it's kind of LIFO stuff. It's just in time, just enough. And it's oftentimes very difficult to go into an LMS and get that information because it might not have been organized that way. So, the fact that it's easier and better is not always the right thing to do. And then secondly, learning by telling. I mean, a lot of times, unless you've been very good at writing your prompts, you're going to get e-learning that basically tries to tell people what to do. And this goes back to Stephanie's thing when I bring up simulations. Simulations aren't always role play. You can have a simulation being, here's a case study, look it over, tell me what product you would recommend to this client, and then tell me why, and I'm going to give you feedback on those things. I mean, those might be at the periphery of these content creation Gen AI tools that are in the LMS, but it's a good answer because you're not just telling them what you want them to know, you're making them apply it. And you can use these content tools to some degree to get there. Now, if you're trying to build a full role play with a video and branching sim where you can talk and have long conversations, that might be one where you use a specialized tool to build that and then upload it to your LMS via a SCORM package. But certainly focusing in on the learning by doing is important, as you're going to hear ad nauseum. And then the other piece about back to one more, but about the assessments is that what I've seen is that most of the assessments are recall based, which is you feed it a bunch of info, and then the kind of questions are things like, which one of the following is not the 4 principles of better sales, or this or that. But all you're asking them to do is parrot back what they heard 3 slides earlier. You're not getting at questions like, how would you apply it to this customer? How would you do that? And so you got to be careful that just asking whether they remember something they heard 10 minutes before, it has nothing really to do with proficiency, or very little to do with it. Maybe they need to know certain stuff, but the big question is, can they apply it? Can they do their job well? So go in with a grain of skepticism about the assessments that you're generating in terms of the data it gives you. So next slide is to translate. So I'm seeing that there's a fair number of platforms that are touting the ability to translate, and we all know that translation into multiple languages in the old days, 20 years ago, you sometimes spent more money on translation than on the actual training content that you're doing. So, eliminating that problem and being able to build a course in your native language and then bingo, having it work, translated into 20 other languages, it's a beautiful thing. But I've seen some severe limitations in most of the platforms that I've looked at. Typically, it's only working with the content that is stored internally. And a few of them that I've seen actually will read, let's say, a SCORM package and translate an e-learning module into it. A lot of times they won't touch documents and PDFs. These are all closed boxes that are just too difficult for Gen AI to open. So a lot of times you see translation only working with content that you generated within, using the content authoring tool that's in the LMS. And the second caveat that I want to point out is that, yeah, it'll translate the words, but it won't handle the localization. For instance, if your training includes stories or scenarios or culturally specific images, that sort of thing, it's not going to touch that. And we've seen that quite a bit in creating training for a global audience. You got to be real careful about the stories and scenarios that you include, because a lot of times they can be very germane to somebody in the US, but somebody in Europe can make no sense out of it, or Southeast Asia. And so localization isn't, it's not something that machine translation does much about, and something you ought to be aware of. All right. This one, very promising. And the idea there is that, can you use Gen AI in order to provide a tailored learning experience for every learner? So instead of a one size fits all for everyone, what you do is that you come up with a mechanism by which they can get just the training they need and all of the training they need in order to achieve proficiency. Now, I'm an old guy. I did quite a lot of work with intelligent tutoring systems in the 90s. And into the early 2000s. This was exactly the idea of the intelligent tutoring system: is engage people in an activity to make them smarter, and then provide remedial help when they flail, or if they show mastery, perhaps you allow them to skip it. Like I said, on paper, at least, it's a beautiful world. There's no wasted time of looking at something that has no relevance to me. And if I'm struggling, I get the additional oomph that I need to truly achieve mastery. But it is hard. It's been hard for SweetRush building custom systems to get to that. And there's these three reasons are why it's hard. First of all, you need to understand and have data about where is this learner, what do they need to know, what do they already know, and that data is shockingly difficult to get. I mean, you can guess that they may need it because of this role or responsibility, but going deeper, again, that's why Teresa and I keep emphasizing the performance piece, is that you really need data from how can they perform on the job, and then maybe that will then do it. But typically with Gen AI in an LMS, it doesn't have that info. The second one is, let's say it recognizes that there's a knowledge or skill gap with this individual. There's very little recourse, because, if they're struggling to do this one kind of subtask in a process, have you built training to specifically address the subtask? It takes a kind of a curriculum-wide strategy to figure out, how do I actually bubble them down to a simpler version of it, or provide explanations around the pieces. You can't simply just oftentimes can't take an existing curriculum and suddenly say, hey, we're gonna make it adaptive. It's a trick to do, and it can be really very difficult to get to it. And then the third one is, if Gen AI guesses wrong, it's just going to get in the way. I mean, and I run into this quite a bit when I use various trainings, is that, like, it wants to help me and it wants to adapt it, but there's times where I'm like, just give me the skinny, and I just want to learn this stuff, and I just don't make decisions for me about what you think I should and shouldn't learn. I want to be in control, and I want to decide on that. So how to be, helpful and not be in the way is an art. And I think that a lot of times I see AI erring on the side of getting in the way. The first cell in Excel every time says, hey, do you want me to use AI? And that's exactly where I want to type first when I create a new Excel spreadsheet. So, like, don't be there, be somewhere else. Don't be right where I want to, not have you be. So there you go. Don't get me started. The next one is AI Sidekick. And I use Sidekick as coach, assistant. There's a bot that's present in the platform, just like when you go to a company's website, down in the lower right. Hey, how can I help you? Let me know. And, this is a beautiful thing, right? I might be doing training, and I might want to ask, well, how does that relate to me and my role? Or what else can I learn? Or where can I go? And so forth. So, Docebo, Cornerstone, Learn Upon, Learn Worlds, we're starting to see these virtual coaches that pop up and are present and available to everywhere. I applaud that. That's great. I mean, there's nothing better than being able to answer a question somebody has on the fly, and whatnot. But, and also keep in mind that even if your LMS doesn't have it, they're going to probably be going to their browser and saying, what is XYZ, and getting answers anyway. So it's going to be happening regardless of whether it's supported in the LMS or not. But on the other hand, again, the LMS vendors are offering this, but it may or may not work well. And the reason being, again, coming back to our now tired theme, is AI needs good data, garbage in, garbage out. It's presumably in the LMS, it's reading through all of your training and then using that in order to generate its answers. But on the other hand, it probably isn't reading your SCORM packages. There's probably a lot of best practices and organizational knowledge that isn't explicit in the LMS, that's in the minds of the individuals around. And so good chance that it gives you inaccurate information, doesn't give you the whole picture, doesn't know fully about all the resources that you might want to turn to, and so on. So really look at, what data is it working with, how is it able to formulate its answers, and how to make, the right information available to the Gen AI so that it can answer well. A second piece I'm going to just bring up about the value in the hunt that is kind of a philosophical thing, so I'm not going to dwell there. But there's value in struggle. Ultimately, if you really want people to master at something and not just be automaton, they're going to have to know things, and they're going to have to be able to do things. And there's a certain struggle in that. And if every answer they ever need is at their fingertips, in all honesty, are we making people, appropriately smart as L&D folks? Like, give them, make them have to work for it. I think that there's value in that. And I think that I worry about an age in which AI is everywhere and always helpful and always good. And, is it kind of an idiocracy at the end of the day? Have we reduced critical thinking and so on? But that's a philosophical argument, and let's have a beer and we can really go at it sometime in the future. But I won't spend time here doing it. And the last one to round this out is AI for administration. And the idea there is it's honed in not on the learner, but on you as an LMS administrator. Can it help you create a report or to enroll people in appropriate training? Or a lot of times it's used to tag content so to facilitate search. I've seen it where it can generate thumbnails, it'll generate course descriptions for you, and so on. And so, the promise here is it's going to take the burden of delivering training to learners away from you, so you can focus on what's important, which might be, building better learning journeys and getting people to proficiency. So, I applaud it because it can be tedious in there, and I think that it's very good for you to do it. But really, I'm sure it's going to get better, because there's a lot of research into agentic AI where it can actually do things and so forth within the platform. Enroll learners in a course, or build a report that you need, and so on. But what I've seen, a lot of it is when you type in what you're looking for, it's basically a glorified knowledge-based search, and it'll just say, here is a link to a page that tells you how to create a curriculum with a certificate at the end, or go to this page to find out how to do SSO in order to allow them to auto log in using their corporate account or whatnot. And it doesn't actually do it for you. It just tells you how to do it, which is great. But it isn't, I have yet to see it where it's knocked me off my feet. And it also doesn't know why you want to do the things you're doing. So I say, with the no understanding, is it doesn't know the big picture, right? So you have to tell it, I'm trying to do X and Y, and therefore I don't see it ever replacing the human administrator. I think all it does is take away some of the more tedious aspects of it, and you still need to be driving the bus as we go forward. So there you go. Those are the 5 trends as we've seen.
So now let's talk a little bit about gamification. In an earlier webinar, we talked about the idea of gamification 2.0, and the shift is pretty simple. So instead of giving learners points and badges, let's focus on real progress, real milestones, real capabilities, the things that actually matter in the day-to-day work and the career growth, like John was saying about some of the content creation earlier. Because let's be honest, getting a lot of points and badges doesn't necessarily guarantee the progress you want. But what if a learner could see a clear learning path, a path that leads to more capability, more responsibility, and more interesting work. But also they can see how what they're learning connects to that. That's really motivating and it's real. So we can also shift from game mechanics to building things like role plays using real world challenges and situations people actually face on the job. Now the learner gets a much clearer picture of where they stand, and so does the organization. And that's where this becomes really powerful because now you're generating useful data, not just completion and test scores, but insight into what someone can actually do, where they're strong and where they need support. And that's the kind of data AI can actually use to adapt, personalize, and get smarter over time. So the purpose of gamification isn't really about making learning feel like a game. It's also about making progress visible and meaningful. So as we wrap things up, here are the 5 things we hope you'll keep in mind. First, you're not replaceable. AI is everywhere, but the human in L&D is still the essential guide for real performance and mastery. Second, remember the big picture. AI is great at tasks, but it's bad at vision. It's on us to define what success actually looks like. And third, show them the why. Learners need to see how a course actually helps them in their specific role. A simple visual roadmap can really help. And fourth, let AI automate, enhance, and extend. Use it to automate the boring tasks, but also use it to build cool simulations so people can practice in a safe space. And finally, treat data like gold. The more you know about your team's skills and interests, the better your decisions and your AI will be. Thank you, everyone, for being here with John and I today. I'll turn it back over to Tiffany.
Thank you, Therese. And thanks to both of you for that tour de force. You've given us a lot to think about. Folks in the audience, if you enjoyed today's session, we would love for you to check out our full L&D and Talent Trends report. I'll pop that link into chat one more time here. Again, today's session and all of the previous sessions in this Unpromptable series have been recorded for your viewing pleasure, and we will send you a link to those. Meanwhile, though, we would love to answer any questions. I know we had some pending in the chat. Stephanie kicked us off with a very good question, and there were a couple more as well. Thank you so much for sharing your curiosity. If there are any others, if you'd like to share any experiences, we'd love to see those as well. We'll give you a
Yeah,
moment.
please enter it in. And in the meantime, I mean, Peter brought up this thing where you get into an argument with Copilot where it's telling you to put data in the table and it clearly hadn't. I mean that is, a lot of technologists are like, oh, that's good, that's going to be a thing of the past. That's got, in the future, it will always be perfect in its response. I take a more tempered and pragmatic approach to say, yeah, I don't necessarily put a lot of stock in the perfectness of the future. So that's really where, as L&D leaders, I'd say that, like, don't just turn it on and assume that it's going to be answering questions well, it's going to be saying the right thing. I mean, QA is a big piece of it. And Sweet Rush, even though we're immersed deeply in the world of how to apply AI, I mean, how to do QA, right? It's dynamically generating answers and it's dynamically doing things in the L&D space. And how do you actually reach a level of confidence that what it's doing is, if not always correct, largely correct? And so we've been actively exploring how to do different protocols, how to do QA. Thought about using Gen AI to QA on Gen AI, but we so far have used human measures of trying to look at how to ensure that the quality is sufficiently robust, because it's the Hippocratic oath, right? Do no harm. We don't want to add AI in there and have it actually work against the L&D mission. That's worse than not using it at all. So I share your frustration at times in my arguments with these various Gemini and Claude and Copilot. So thank you for sharing.
Folks, there was an earlier question. I'm just scrolling to try to find it here. Stephanie was curious about what tool we were talking about. I think that was during the conversation about generating learning experiences within the LMS. I would think a storyboard would be generated, but voiceover, interactivity, knowledge checks, choose your own adventure. Is that something that is a capability right now?
Yeah, it's kind of a blend in that, with Sweet Rush, and we're in kind of a unique situation. So we're technology. I should have brought this up at the beginning. We're technology agnostic in that we don't tout a given platform. We don't have a one that we turn to. We typically work with clients to build bespoke training experiences or to help them with their LMS. But whatever technology the client has is the technology that we embrace and try to make use of. And so as a result, like we don't, build most of our training using LMSs, except that when we've worked with clients that they have the content authoring tool and they've used it in order to do that. So I can't say I can speak with a lot of conviction there, but I do know that in a blend, you can go to a Chat GPT or Claude or whatnot, or Gemini or Copilot, and you can do things like, here is the situation that our people commonly face. Let's go back to the sales one. We have 500 salespeople, which is what that distributor has. They are working in these industries. These are the products. Generate 5 scenarios for me that would involve where they have to apply this particular product with a need. And Gen AI does a great, either within the OMS or just on the side through a browser. It does a shockingly good job often of coming up with, here are 5 of them, and then you can kind of look at those and go, all right, that second one is great. Give me 3 variations of it. And again, simulation doesn't necessarily mean a role play turn taking simulation. It can simply be, here's a situation. How would you respond in it, and justify how you're going to respond? So it's literally a 2-turn, branching sim, or just a series of questions. This client has this need. What product would you recommend to them? Why do you make that recommendation? Real simple stuff. And so use Gen AI to create the seed of the scenario, the story that you're going to put people in. And then I think, without being able to say I've done this extensively, go into the Gen AI tool within the OMS and say, okay, here's the scenario. Can you please, craft it as an e-learning module that I can publish, and now add an assessment at the end, which is basically a application-based assessment of these are the questions that I want to ask them that. And in some orchestration with Gen AI, you now have an e-learning module that is learning by doing and not simply telling them stuff and then testing recall. So, like I said, I think that there's a lot of promise in that. And there's a lot of promise if the OMS is actually capturing the results of that, people participating in it. You can go back and look and go, well, you know what? Every single person screwed this up. That's an interesting insight. Let's go back into it and figure out, do they need additional training? Are we hiring the wrong people? Is it unrealistic expectations that we've set in terms of their abilities? Data has value. And so, once you're there, the data, hopefully the OMS makes it available to you.
Thanks, John. In Q&A as well, Joe asks, can AI help me with goal setting for developing an e-learning service for external professionals, skills, and ordinary members of the public, awareness raising, etc., not for internal staff? And Joe adds, today I asked Copilot to summarize meeting transcription, and it offered a really quite impressively structured action plan based on my discussion with a colleague to help me develop my objectives.
Yeah, more power to you. Clearly, if it did give you something that you have value in, then I would guess that you have some degree of adeptness at writing the prompt that gets you there. I think that that's great. We internally, we call them learning experience designers. Our instructional designers do this quite frequently, and they can say, give me a high level design, an outline of a particular training, course or curriculum that they're doing. They can say, give me this, that, and the other. Give me a strategic long term thinking. I would say that, even if you said, like I said, I keep thinking the human ought to be the general on the hill guiding the troops. I don't think you just suddenly say, let Gen AI make all the decisions, because it doesn't understand your company. It doesn't know what you're trying to do long term. It knows what you tell it, and you probably didn't tell it, everything it needs to know to be that senior leader, decision maker at a company. But the lower level of, give me an outline, give me a trend, give me 5 talking points, give me a sample curriculum, beautiful thing.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So I will, yesterday I sat in an internal, we had all of our engineers together and we were looking at how a couple of the engineers, just kind of like that workshop I mentioned with pharmaceuticals, and we were looking at basically code generation via Opus and other tools that are out there. And and so we're looking at it and it really is shocking that even skeptics, and programmers are like, you know what, when I got the prompts down and did this right, it came up with a decent structure to the way that I want to create, a full stack app. And it wasn't perfect. There were things that were missing, but I was shocked that it actually did what it might take me 10 or 20 hours to do manually. It set up for me. But we were talking philosophically about this, and these people are all 10, 20 years of coding. So they're very experienced. And what they pointed out is they feel really bad for the 22-year-old programmer coming out because in their opinion, at least, and I think I share it with them, they're experienced programmers. So when Gen AI creates kind of the program shell, the code shell, they can quickly look at it and say, this is right. No, this is wrong. Don't do it this way, because they've done it and they have the deep understanding of how code should be structured and how to optimize and what are common bugs you're going to run into if you haven't done that. And so it's a great tool to help them be much quicker. But for somebody coming in that doesn't have that experience, right now you can't just trust it, vibe coding stuff aside, you just can't trust it to sit there and pump out a production quality commercial grade piece of software. It won't do that. And so if you're in your 20s and you're joining a company that says, I expect you to write code in one day because my senior guys do it, there's no learning experience directly, because you're just vibing it, but you don't have the depth of understanding. And I see that in programming, but I think that's true of all the, when I talked about applying it for a clinician and whatnot, they probably have to have struggled with spreadsheets and how to do a pattern now, matching and analyses in order for them to know AI is on the right track or AI isn't. So robbing them of these opportunities to actually do it the old way is probably, putting them at a loss when it comes to professional viability. So one of the few reasons I think I'm glad I'm older is the fact that I'm not facing this as a 20 or 22-year-old, different world. So.
Absolutely. John and Therese, Kindred makes a point that I think speaks so much to the things that we've been talking about a lot lately. Kindred asks, how do you handle employees who are dubious about the ethics of AI? A lot of our team has questions about the morality of using it, and I want to make sure I respect that. That's right up our alley.
Yeah, I mean, and Treats, I don't know what you're thinking about it. I think about this question every day because I look at society, and I think particularly with COVID, we've all moved into a virtual space. It used to be I would see people in the hallway, we would sit down together at a whiteboard, we go out to lunch and yak about work, and maybe a beer afterwards and so forth. And there was constant, interactions. And these days, we're all sitting in our office and we do have Zoom, and that's a nice thing and whatnot. But our contact with other humans is less. And I think that end of the day, if you bring AI in where I don't have to go to my boss and ask him a question, and I don't have to go, to a colleague and say, what are you up to? Because AI, particularly with OpenClaw and whatnot, where AI is looking at my emails and giving that, I mean, is it going to make us even more isolated and whatnot? I mean, we're a social species. For 6,000 years, we've depended on other humans from the moment we emerged from our mother's womb, and that's not changing. So there's a deep base need for us to work with other human beings, and if AI takes that away, I don't know. So I think that's an honest question to talking with employees, because the other side of it is AI is here, and a lot of people are using it really, really well. They don't feel like they're being threatened. They still feel like they're doing good work. In fact, better work than they were doing. And the programmers yesterday, I mean, when they were looking at this, they were like, "This thing is helping me produce better code and getting it out there with quicker and with a higher degree of reliability." We're not firing those programmers. They're too valuable to us. We're going to, if anything, make more use of them because of the fact that they're showing themselves to be productive. But that's a conversation that ought to be had over and over again, because end of the day, Meg is even saying there, we're tribal people, and end of the day, let's not bring society to a place that we all regret getting to.
Yeah, and I think also, John, it speaks to your whole example about getting to the depth, right? If there's some sort of morality, like I'm cheating because I'm using AI, if you really have that depth of knowledge, it's supplementing. It's not replacing you as a human. It doesn't replace your depth or your experience or the things that you've experienced in your role over the years. So I think that's another thing that plays into it.
Absolutely. Those are great points. There was another question that I think we may have time to address before we wrap up. Jen was asking, how do you envision learning in the flow of work evolving with
Yeah.
AI? And how do you think big vendors will adjust to make their learning systems work as agents in other large corporate systems? Okay, these might be big questions, but let's see what we
No,
can
no,
manage.
that's a really good question because I mean, right now, the reason why there's such an interest in agentic AI is it's one thing for, what we most of us have experienced, which is I type in a question or feed some information to Gen AI with instructions and I get text back, or maybe I get an image or video, but I get something back. And on the other hand, like if I want to figure out an LMS, okay, I need to enroll these people based on these qualities or whatever. It can point me to say, yeah, here's the step-by-step instructions, but I still have to do it. And so the idea of agentic AI in general is you can actually equip it with the means to go into platforms and actually perform things. And when you ask about what level of integrations are you going to see, I would be shocked if you don't begin to see built-in agents. And a big one is, coordination between an LMS and an HRIS system. So HRIS systems, typically maintain all sorts of information about learners, way more than an LMS will typically capture. So if you want to say something like, I want to do a targeted piece of training to everybody in the company who has been there on, within 6 months of their, employment there, chances are you don't have their tenure in the LMS. So to be able to send an LMS's, agentic AI to say, go over to the HRIS system, come back with a list of all the names of people who have been on the job for less than 6 months, and then enroll them in this particular curricula. I don't have any deep insight into whether this is going on, but I would be shocked if they're not actively exploring that because, frankly, from an LMS vendor standpoint, the more integrated it is into your overall tech ecosystem, the less likely you are to move to another LMS vendor, even if you hate that LMS vendor, they're too deeply embedded. And so you do see a lot of legacy systems that are there simply because no one has the time and energy to shift over to do a new one. And so the tighter you can integrate, for that matter, I'll bring up something about content, the built-in content tools, which is what I tell clients quite a bit. One of the things to think about is that as soon as you start using the content editing tool, authoring tool in your LMS, it's going to be really hard to migrate to another LMS in the future because that content is in their database. And I've yet to see an LMS vendor provide an export button because they want you to stay, right? And I've seen it where people are like, yeah, we would love to shift from this one over to another one, but frankly, there's 200 hours of training that we built in the LMS and we're now locked in because we're going to have to in fact, we've had gigs where we've manually had to copy content, screen by screen from embedded content into a SCORM package so then it can be migrated up to a different LMS. So, even though it's a beautiful thing, always think about how do you get that content out of there in case you ever decide a year from now that there's an LMS vendor that's doing more of what you want than the one you're currently in. I mean, you don't want to be locked into something and hate it, but not have any, degrees of freedom to get free of it.
Thank you, John. I think it is time to wrap up. Sadly, I know there are some unanswered questions, folks, but we will follow up. We will be putting together an article and answering the questions that we didn't get to. So we will definitely get to those later outside the webinar. And then you can always reach out on LinkedIn. You should have John's and Teresa's links in
Yeah.
chat, and they would love to connect and just keep talking shop with you. But thank you for
Absolutely.
coming
Absolutely.
today.
Yeah. Don't both of us. I mean, reach out. I love, this is our passion, our craft, our livelihood. We're always happy to talk about things and we're always happy to learn things. So if you've got anything to teach us, please don't hesitate.
Absolutely. Thanks so much for joining us today and closing out the series with us. It was great to see you at our season finale, and we hope to see you again and be in touch with you.